to Real Joe Culture. As always, the call number is 347-215-6180. You can follow me on Twitter at William Gerald, or go to my Instagram page at Rillo Gerald Quinn, iTunes.apple, iTunes.apple.com, Real Deal Podcast. And I think that we've given up all the plugs, all the ways that's platforms that you can find me at. I'm sure there are more, but we only have about 44 minutes left on this latest edition of the Real Deal Podcast. I'm happy to be with you this afternoon, or this early evening, as we get ready for a crucial, critical game number 5 between the Boston Celtics and the Cleveland Cavaliers. So far, the form has held as far as the home team's dominance. Boston licking their wounds after 2 tough losses to Cleveland, especially Game 3. We saw some good things in Game 4, especially in that fourth quarter. And really, you look at that Game 4. Boston lost that game in the first quarter. For the rest of the last 3 quarters, they outscored Boston, but were not able to make up a 34-18 deficit in the first quarter. But we'll have plenty of time for that. We're going to begin with a classic in Oakland, as the Houston Rockets finally showed you something with a gutty 95-92 victory over the defending NBA champion Golden State Warriors. I thought Houston's defense in that game was nothing short of spectacular, especially in the fourth quarter. Remember, Golden State came into that fourth quarter with 80 points. Okay, came in there at 80 points. At one point held an 82-70 lead. Houston, Chris Paul, Trevor Ariza, Eric Gordon has made some big 3-point shots. Golden State went cold, especially from 3-point range. I thought Golden State got kind of tight. But to me, all the credit goes to Houston. I don't want to hear anything about Andre Iguodala being out. I don't want to hear anything about, even Golden State shot selection, even though we know it was poor. This was about the Houston defense. Whether it's Gerald Green, PJ Tucker, who had 15 rebounds, Trevor Ariza, those guys defensively, Capella, those guys defensively were spectacular. And, I wondered over the course of the season, and talking to people, talking to NBA fans during the course of the season, as Houston was rolling along with these 13 and 14 game winning streaks, you knew at one point that they were going to have the best record in basketball, and that was going to be a foregone conclusion, basically from, I would say, late February, early March on. But to me, I wanted to know what Houston would do in these quote unquote moment of truth playoff moments, these moment of truth games, these moment of truth moments in the playoffs. That's what defines a championship team. How are you down 2-1, coming off a historic shellacking in terms of that was Golden State's largest victory in the history of their postseason. A franchise that has won 4 championships. So you come off an embarrassing game, 41-point deficit. You're down 12-0 in the first quarter. Okay, you overcome that, take control of the game by halftime up by 7. Then you have to deal with the latest Steph Curry barrage in the third quarter. Golden State goes up by 12 in the fourth. So Houston, in essence, had to win this game. Really had to win this game twice. First quarter, and then the fourth quarter. And again, defensively, they were spectacular. And like I've said before, I've said this numerous times in terms of Golden State, in terms of how you beat Golden State. You don't beat Golden State by adding 5 All-Stars. You don't beat Golden State by trying to combat their firepower. That's not how you beat Golden State. You beat Golden State by getting physical, by defending them, getting in Steph Curry's chest, getting in Kevin Durant's chest, closing out on their shooters. And ironically, I think Houston has stumbled from an offensive standpoint, they have stumbled into a strategy as far as in terms of how to beat Golden State, and that's with their isolation offense. I think they isolate. And again, sometimes it's tough to watch. The dribble, 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 dribble. But Golden State, for whatever reason, has been lulled to sleep by Houston's offense, and has tried to. And to me, especially in the last, not last couple games, but last game, last night's game in particular, tried to go, tit for tat with Houston as far in terms of isolation basketball. And that is not how Golden State's going to win this series, by going isolation basketball one on one, playing Houston style. That's just not going to happen. But to me, again, that game was determined by Houston's defense. You see, held Golden State 39% shooting. You look at some of these hustle stats. They had nine. Golden State, Houston had, as I look at the stats here, 7 steals, 9 block shots. So 7 steals, 9 block shots. They destroyed Golden State from the outshot Golden State from the line, outscored Golden State from the foul line, 23 of 13. That's how you beat Golden State. We saw it in 2015 when Memphis had them down 2-1. We saw it even in the finals when Cleveland had to play that ugly basketball because they had, Kevin Love and Kyrie, and they had to play that slow down, muddle up, you know, basically the equivalent of taking the air out of the ball. If this were the NFL, had to play that style of basketball, and it got them 2 games in a series that they had no business winning 8 games, let alone 2 games in. You saw it in 2016, the last 3 games of the finals. Though they had some circumstances with Draymond Green's suspension, but regardless, they held Golden State to basically 101, 97, and 89 points in that series, the last 3 games of that series. You beat Golden State by defensively. It's not about trying to outscore Golden State. You're not going to outscore 4 future Hall of Famers. It's just not going to happen. And 3 of the greatest shooters that the game has ever seen. They're not going to outscore you. It's just not going to happen. You're not going to outscore Golden State. So give Houston a lot of credit. I believe Houston can win now. I never thought that I would believe that thought would ever come to them. I don't think they will. Now, that's the difference. I think they can. Gun to my head, life on the line, I still think Golden State finds a way to win this series. I'm thinking right now in 7 games. So I think right now you'll see a situation similar Lakers 2002. We've seen it Detroit against Miami 2005. We've seen teams win conference finals games on the road in recent memory. So I think it doesn't happen that often. Those teams are 2-13 lifetime in NBA history, but I really think it will happen this time around. We'll see how Golden State responds in a game 5. Again, I believe this series is going the distance. I think it's setting up to be a classic these last couple of games. I don't think you'll see any more blowouts. I think these games moving forward will be all close games. 347-215-6180 is your call number on this latest edition of the Real Deal Podcast. We will be right back. 347-215-6180 is your call number on this latest edition of the Real Deal Podcast as we get ready for a game 5 between Boston and Cleveland. Boston back home. Boston has been a completely different team home versus away. They are scoring 16 points more at home, 110 versus 94. They have guys that obviously, their role players obviously play much better. If you're Boston, you want to get out if you're Cleveland, you just want to just maintain the first quarter. Just don't get destroyed in the first quarter, get down 10, 15, 10, 15, 20 points in the first quarter. You just keep your head above water and keep the game close in the first quarter, and Cleveland should be fine moving forward. You want to make this, if you're Cleveland, you want to make this a four-quarter game. That's the goal. Just don't, you want to make this a four-quarter game. Boston, that crowd's going to be crazy. They probably, I'm sure they've been drinking since about four. So that Celtic crowd is one of the best in the league. We know how wild, and it pains me to say that as a Laker fan, but it's true. The Celtic fans are wild. They're going to be, that crowd's going to be electric back home for a game five. And you know what? Listen, we complained for the first part of these playoffs, excuse me, of these conference finals about the scores of the games and all these blowouts. Really, the first five games. I think moving forward, you're going to see all close games. To be honest with you, I think all of these games are going to be relatively close moving forward. And I think tonight will be no different. I expect this game to be a close game. I think that this series, unlike Golden State Houston, I'm not as confident of this series going seven. I think if Cleveland wins tonight, I think Cleveland will wrap it up in six. If Boston wins, I think I think we will see a game seven. I think we will see a game seven in Boston if Boston wins tonight. Because I cannot envision Cleveland losing a closeout game to this Boston team in terms of how young they are, being down three games to two. I don't envision that whatsoever. But I do feel that they will wrap the series up if they take out Boston tonight. Listen, Boston, you have to be feeling good if you're Boston, feeling better about yourself, considering how that fourth quarter went in game four. Jalen Brown got off. I thought Terry Rozier, even though he got abused on defense, had a good had a relatively had a pretty good game. Almost had a triple double, even though I'm not a triple double guy, but he had, I thought his all around game was his floor game, had a nice floor game. Um, if you're Boston, you gotta have to find a way to get Horford back to form. I thought for Horford, to be honest with you, I thought outside of LeBron, Horford was the best player in this series, the first two games of the series. Now he struggled. Now Thompson listen, I like the narrative, right? So these playoffs, especially with Golden State Cleveland, has been the conference finals has been a series of narratives. I like the narrative. The first two games, it was the narrative. LeBron's by himself. He doesn't have any help. Is 1-on-5, the worst cast, his worst cast since 2009, maybe in 2007. Tristan Thompson, the last two games, really throughout the course of the series, Tristan Thompson has played great. Okay, he's played great over the past, especially the past two games. Corver, George Hill, those guys played well in Cleveland. So now I just wonder what the narrative is going to be uh, moving forward for Cleveland about in terms of LeBron, because now again we're at a point where either LeBron gets none of the blame and all the credit. That's where we're at with LeBron in the narrative, as people are trying to manufacture his way to being the greatest of all time, which is all comes down to. Golden State. It was when Steph wasn't making shots. It was he's hurt. Then he started making shots. Now that narrative is dead because that narrative is gone based on the last two games. You can't use the injuries as an excuse. Now the excuse was, well, Iguodala is the glue guy. They miss Golden State's quote unquote glue guy. Yeah, Iguodala keeps everything together. Like they defensively at this point in his career, Iguodala is a slightly above average defensive player, still a good playmaker, but is not a real legit offensive threat outside of putbacks or hustle plays at this point. Like I don't, like they did not miss Andre Iguodala offensively last night in that game. Iguodala, they still had three legitimate playmakers in terms of Draymond Green, Steph Curry, and Kevin Durant, who can all get their own shot and create shots for others. So I don't want to hear that narrative or that excuse as far as Golden State goes. But getting back to Cleveland, LeBron James has gotten plenty of help over the past two games. Without it's not even the discussion. I mean, Kyle Korver's played great. Even J.R. Smith has made some shots. George Hill has played well, gotten off to quick starts. Tristan Thompson has been a beast inside. So, again, I don't want to hear that narrative, that idea that LeBron's not getting that, doesn't have any help, and is basically playing by itself. Again, and Kevin Love, they've gotten enough out of Kevin Love. It hasn't been great in this series, but they've gotten enough out of him over the course of the last couple games to be, you have to, if you're the other team, if you're Boston, you have to honor Kevin Love's presence on the floor. He still is able to spread the floor, still is able to bring out a big man. So we'll see what happens in terms of the game five, Boston Cleveland. Of course, the NBA. Now the NBA did one smart thing a couple of days ago, and that was move the NBA Finals up to May 31st instead of June 7th. So they made the NBA Finals. Welcome back to this latest edition of the Real Deal Podcast. 48 minutes after the 7 o'clock hour on this latest edition of the Deal Podcast, 347-215-6180. Of course, we are on YouTube, and streaming will be available after the program, probably about 10 to 15 minutes after the program has aired. It will be available on YouTube a little bit later on. Y'all give me a couple hours in terms of the Blog Talk Radio for the program. So, but YouTube should be available anywhere from 15, I would say about 15 to 30 minutes, or 20 to 30 minutes after the program has aired. Tonight's headlines, of course, big night if you're a fan in DMV. The Washington Capitals are in Tampa for a Game 7. Game will kick off. Will not kick off, but they'll drop the puck in about 10 minutes, about 12 minutes or so, 8 o'clock. The Capitals are the ultimate torture franchise. There's one thing, like, think about how many ways the Capitals can torture their fan base. Blow a 2-0 lead, okay? Blow a 2-0 lead, and then and losing a Game 7. Like, it's one thing just lose 4 straight and losing 6. But no, we're gonna extend the torture. We're gonna stretch it out, win Game 6, and then go to a Game 7. So again, we'll see what happens. This has been a series that has been dominated by the road teams. Road teams are 3-1. Again, I don't. Based on the history, you have to get the edge to Tampa Bay. I'm not even talking about home ice. Washington in their history is 4-11 in Game 7's lifetime. They've had a number. We all know a number of those losses at home. Some of them courtesy, of course, to my beloved Pittsburgh Penguins, who they took out last week, of course, in last week, or not, a week before last, in 6 games. But we'll see what happens with the Capitals. Again, I think the winner of this game, of course, will face the Vegas Golden Knights, who you have a feeling like is one of those situations where it is Las Vegas's year in terms of that Cinderella story. They basically, I think they were 200-1 at the beginning of the season to make the Stanley Cup. Again, one of the best sports stories of the year, without question. What's going on in Las Vegas with the team that they have, and they'll be waiting for the winner of this game. We'll see what the Capitals can do. Can they finally come up big in a Game 7? Of course, you had the announcement from the NFL about the anthem policy. The NFL, basically, split the difference. Yes, you can protest, but you have to protest without any anyone seeing you, whether it's fans watching the game on television or at the stadium, and two, you of course, if you do come out of the tunnel, if you're a player, you you can't, basically you can't kneel. Now it's subject to interpretation in terms of what a protest is, because our players are going to get fined for locking arms. Our players are going to get fined for putting up a fist. This certainly will be tested over um, over the course of the season. Again, this is to me, this situation is far from over. All the NFL did basically to me is I try to appease their sponsors, um, a couple fans here and there, but mainly this is the NFL trying to take care of its own pocketbook, so to speak, and trying to basically put a bow on an issue that to me is not going anywhere. The players, of course, are not happy about it. I can see some players. You've already had an acting owner of the Jets say that he will come out and play, that will pay the players fines. So we'll see if that's going to happen. But we've already seen some backlash from that standpoint. There will be some players who go out there and protest, who go out there and kneel. I guarantee it's going to happen. I guarantee. Maybe not as many, but there will be some players out there who are kneeling. And think about this: what if with some players on the edge of the tunnel and are taking a knee as well? With cameras show players, with some of the television cameras show players kneeling or protesting inside the tunnel. It probably won't happen, but again, this thing is not over. Again, the NFL is terrible at dealing with these types of situations. They want to just sweep it under the carpet, basically, have it go away, and then have everybody talking about Tom Brady versus Aaron Rodgers in October or whenever Green Bay plays New England. That's what the NFL wants. But this is not going to happen with this issue. This issue is not going anywhere. The owners, the NFL, did not even consult with the NFL Players Association, which again ticked off a lot of players. Now you've got some guys, you have some players who are saying that they will use other platforms, basically to use other platforms to get their point across. But this is not going anywhere anytime soon. All the NFL did was, I think, basically put a band-aid. I feel like put a band-aid on a gunshot wound. We will be talking about this over the course of this season. Maybe not to the level we talked about it in 2017, but this is something that we will still be talking about in the upcoming NFL season. 347-215-6180. This is the latest edition of the Real Deal Podcast. We'll be right back. 347-215-6180 is your call number on this latest edition of the Real Deal Podcast with Cyril Gerald Quinn, as we discuss the world of sports and pop culture. Not much on the pop culture tonight. You got the Star Wars movie coming out Friday. Empire season finale tonight. For those, I have a DVR, so I won't be watching it. I'll catch up with it probably in the weekend. It's probably time for Empire to wrap it up. Yeah, I think it might be that time. I know they got Forrest Whitaker in the mix. He has a big role with the show. Again, Forrest Whitaker is a great actor, but it got getting kind of redundant, over the top. Maybe they probably went 2 seasons too long, but definitely I don't think I'll be surprised if they got a season 5. I'd be surprised if there was a season 5. I don't know if they've been already approved for a season 5 or confirmed that it's going to be a season 5. But again, you get the sense that it's probably time to wrap up the show. So you had that. You had that going on tonight. Um, so that's basically again Star Wars Han Solo. Han Solo movie will be released. Was it Friday? Yeah, I think Friday. Yes, Friday. So you'll have that. They'll probably do some big numbers over the course of the weekend. I'll definitely will check it out. Check it out. Being the Star Wars fanatic that I am. Deadpool. You have that for if you're a movie goer for the Memorial Day weekend. So as we get ready for the first official, the unofficial start of summer, Memorial Day weekend, always, especially now with such beautiful weather. And how about this? It was to see the sun come out a couple of days ago. It was like you almost forgot what the sun looked like with some of these, with basically 5 or 6 days straight of rain. Now it seems like the weather is settling in, getting ready for a month, another month or so. Everybody be out of school, get ready for the beach. Get ready for the beach. The end of the NBA season. Again, will be starting May 31st. May 31st this year instead of the first Thursday in June, which to me was a smart move by the NBA and moving up that date. And as of right now, who knows who will the two teams be? I mean, listen, we've been sometimes the sporting guys have their way with you. We've been talking throughout the course of the season. Golden State, Cleveland, Golden State, Cleveland, LeBron, Kevin Durant. And that this matchup was basically inevitable, and that they would meet for a fourth straight year. It could be Boston and Houston. I mean, again, it could. I'm still favoring Golden State, still favoring Cleveland for the most part, but it easily could be Boston and Houston. Again, how we began the program, that was a gut check win victory for the Houston Rockets. That was not, again, when Golden State loses, everybody wants to make excuses why they lost. Steph Curry's injury, Andre Iguodala being out, their shot was off, so on and so on. Steve Kerr's tie, whatever. Well, he doesn't even wear a tie, but you know what I mean. Everybody wants to make excuses on why Golden State lost instead of giving the other team credit. Last night, there was no excuses. Houston took that game away from them in the fourth quarter. Very strange game, to say the least, considering that you had Golden State having 34 point quarters. They had 2 quarters over 30 points, and then 2 quarters under 20 points. They had a 12-point quarter, and check here, I believe a 18-point quarter. So 18-point quarter and a 12-point quarter, sandwich along on 18-point quarter and a 12-point quarter, had a 28-point quarter in the first, 28-point quarter and a 34-point quarter, while Houston on the reverse had a 19-point quarter and a 17-point quarter, sandwiched between a 34-point quarter. So it was kind of an odd game from that standpoint. And then neither team shot the ball well. Both teams shot under 40%. It was one of those good old fashioned, hard-nosed playoff games. Physical game. A lot of defense. Both teams played well defensively. Houston, again, in that second half, in that fourth quarter, was spectacular with their defense. They were all over Golden State. Very little. I mean, maybe Golden State might have had like 2 uncontested shots. Steph Curry missed a wide open 3-point shot that went in and out in the fourth quarter. That was a big miss. Draymond Green had a big free throw miss and had a missed dunk that was huge. Again, you saw Chris Paul, Eric Gordon, and Trevor Ariza make big threes over the court during that stretch in the fourth quarter as they outscored Golden State 25 to 12. Again, I never thought that I would ever see a Golden State team held to 12 points in its own building in any quarter, for that matter, especially with the 4 offensive weapons they had on the floor. And again, this is the lowest point total output Golden State has ever had with all 4 of those guys healthy in terms of Durant, Curry, Thompson, and Draymond Green. They've had lower point totals, but that was when Curry might have been out of game. Durant might have been, remember Durant. I think Curry was out. Curry has missed time Missed time in the playoffs this year. That they had a 90-point output against was it Utah? No, San Antonio in round one when they lost game three of that series, or game four, excuse me, game four of that series. And then last year, their lowest output last year was, I want to say, 101 against Utah. Their lowest output was, I don't think they were under 100 in any game last year in the playoffs. I don't believe they were under 100 in any game last year in the playoffs. Right, because that's right. Because Kevin Durant came back game one of the Portland series. He came back and played. So they were not under 100 in any game in the playoffs in the playoffs last year. So again, they are not as good as they were last year. That's one thing we can that goes without saying. That Golden State is not the same team that they were last year, as good as they were last year. Same cast, relatively the same, basically the same team in terms of their main core players, but they're not as good. But regardless, they should never, ever lose a series with Steph Curry, Kevin Durant, Draymond Green, and Klay Thompson on the floor. Bottom line, this would be a devastating loss for Golden State if they were to lose this series. And again, the 90s Bulls, 2000s Lakers, 80s Celtics, 80s Lakers, all the great teams over the history of the NBA have had to show you something during their run. Bulls went game seven, a couple of game sevens again, won a game seven against the Knicks in 92, won a game seven against the Pacers in 98. Lakers won a game seven against Portland in 2000, game seven against Sacramento 2002. So all the great teams, if Golden State wants to truly consider themselves a great team, let's see them win a series. Let's see them with this team win a series where they're not destroying everybody, where they have to actually get down there, get their hands dirty against a team that has zero fear of them, against a team that has two future Hall of Famers in their own right, in Chris Paul and James Harden, and against a team that was designed to beat them. Let's see it without home court advantage. So let's see Golden State get down and dirty and gut out a series. Because again, if you cannot win a series when you're not playing your best basketball, if you cannot win a series where you're not rolling over people, overwhelming people on just sheer talent, then to me, you are not a great team. You're not an all-time great team. And this team, in order to become an all-time great team, this team is going to have to win multiple championships. I said minimum three, maybe four championships for me to consider them an all-time great team. And I'm not even talking about the ring that they won before Kevin Durant got here. I'm talking about they need to win 3 to 4 championships with Kevin Durant for this team to me, for me to consider them an all-time great team. Period. So go out there, face a team against Houston that has no fear of you, win a game seven on the road. We've seen the Lakers do it. We've seen Cleveland do it a couple years ago in Golden State. Russell did it against the Lakers back in the day in '69. If you're a great team, you can go out there and win a game seven on the road. 347-215-6180 is your call number on this latest edition of the Real Deal Podcast. We'll be right back. Welcome back to this latest edition of the Real Deal Podcast as we get ready for a NBA night. Cleveland, Boston looking to bounce back, coming off two different losses. Game 3, they had no chance in. Game 4, they were somewhat competitive, but Cleveland was in control basically from start to finish. If you're Boston, you want to get your crowd into it early. Again, I think Al Horford has to get back to being the second best player in this series for me for Boston to win. He has to dominate. Not he really has been ever since they really inserted Tristan Thompson in the starting lineup. Al Horford has been negated by Thompson. Give Tristan Thompson a lot of credit. Remember, Tristan Thompson has historically given Al Horford all kinds of fits during the course of their respective careers. And this series it has been no different. So you have to see Al Horford back started to being what he was the first two games. Again, I'll be watching out for Boston's young players: Tatum, Jalen Brown, Rozier. Now these are the critical games of the series: games 5, 6, and 7. Cleveland, of course, has found their rhythm with some of their role players. We know what you're going to get out of LeBron. The only thing to watch out for LeBron is the kind of approach he will take. We immediately attack in terms of scoring wise, or will he just go out there and start out as a facilitator to try to get guys going? I feel like it being on the road, this being a critical game 5, that LeBron probably will try to get his first, and allow everybody else to settle in or follow his lead over the course of the first quarter. I think on the road, because LeBron knows that on the road, if you don't want to get blown out of the building, especially the way this series has gone, and we've seen teams in this series lose the game in the first quarter. You're gonna have to hit first, and Cleveland if Cleveland, if you're Cleveland, you want to hit first. You want to hit first. You do not want to come from behind with Boston. Boston's too good of a defensive team in order for that to happen. So I think Cleveland, if you're Cleveland, you want to hit first. You want to make this a four quarter game, and have some of their young players, from Boston, have some of them guys feel some pressure. This is game 5. They're at home. Their fans are going to expect them to win. Everybody, they expect them to bounce back. This is their first real pressure they felt since game 1 of the series. Now they responded in game 1 with 25-point victory. Game 2, you lose game 2, you have game 1 under your belt. But game 1 was the pressurized game for Boston without question. So right now we'll see if Boston can bounce back. We'll see if their young players can bounce back. Again, if you're a Boston fan, you have to like what you saw in the fourth quarter out of Jalen Brown. Jalen Brown was a non-factor in Game 3 after having two good Game 2s. So we'll see if Jalen Brown can kind of build off that 25-point game in Game 4 and carry it over to TD Garden come around 8:30ish or 8:30ish or so, as Boston looks to take a 3-2 lead over the Cleveland Cavaliers. Again, I still like Golden State and Cleveland to be in the finals, but I am certainly not as confident as I was before the playoffs started. Definitely before these series started. So we'll see what happens over the course of tonight and tomorrow night. Again, it should be a lot of exciting basketball over the Memorial Day weekend. I think you're going to get a bunch of close games. I think you're probably going to see 2 Game 7s, at least one. We'll see how it all pans out, and I will see you next time on this latest edition of the Real Deal Podcast. I'm out.